Yeah, welcome everybody. I would like to talk about currency crisis models. And here I would like to talk about one application regarded to the experience of Switzerland with its Swiss franc. So let's try to motivate this paper. So you can see here the exchange rate development, Swiss franc for like €1. So the price of €1 measured in Swiss franc. The exchange rate decreased tremendously over a 1.5 year time period from the level of 1.5 to the level of 1. Then we can see here a very strong increase to the level of like above 120, and then the exchange rate was at the level of 120 for a long time period because the Swiss central bank introduced like a lower floor of 120 Swiss franc for like €1. So more or less a kind of fixed exchange rate system. The exchange rate was above 120 for like a 2-3 year time period. But then in January 2015, the Swiss central bank like abolished the fixed exchange rate system, abolished the lower floor, and then you can see here a very severe appreciation in a very short time period. So we have seen a very sharp appreciation from 2010 to 2011. So the exchange rate in January 2010 was at 150 Swiss franc per euro. And 1.5 years later, the exchange rate was at 1 Swiss franc per euro. If the ski rental in Switzerland cost like 150 Swiss franc, in January, a tourist from Euroland has to pay €100, but when 1.5 years later, the price increased to €150 because of this exchange rate development. So prices within Switzerland are up by 50% from the view of a European tourist. So the Swiss export sector has a problem because you can also ski in France, in Austria, in Germany, or in Italy. And you also have the Alps there, but the euro is used in this country so that the other countries do not experience this very severe price increase, which is due to the exchange rate development. So the solution was like the central bank introduced like a lower floor at 120 Swiss franc per euro. But let's think about what are the effects for the Swiss central bank and its balance sheet. So we are assuming here that we are looking at the Swiss central bank's balance sheet. The markets are testing the 120 lower bound of the exchange rate. The central bank has to intervene to defend the fixed exchange rate. And the central bank buys euro assets with freshly printed Swiss franc banknotes. So, like the fresh banknotes in circulation increase by 120 Swiss franc. And then we have, like on the left-hand side of the balance sheet, the central bank has acquired Euroland assets of the value of €100, which have at this exchange rate a value of 120 Swiss franc. So the balance sheet is becoming longer and longer and longer because the central bank is intervening. The Swiss central bank is like using the printing press to create more Swiss franc, and then is buying like Euroland assets. So the Swiss franc in circulation increases. Maybe this could lead to inflation in the future in case that these banknotes are used to go shopping in Switzerland. Of course, this is questionable. Maybe this Swiss franc are just used like to save money in a secure currency, and then this does not affect the Swiss goods market. So, how does our stylized balance sheet, which we introduced here, look like like after the switch to a floating exchange rate system in January 2015, when the exchange rate level is at the level of 120 Swiss franc per euro. So the Euroland assets of 100 euros now only have the value of 100 Swiss franc. So the left-hand side of the balance sheet decreases. The assets have a lower value, and the central bank is making a loss of like 20 Swiss franc, so that like the equity of the Swiss central bank is wiped out completely. So at the exchange rate of 1 Swiss franc per US dollar, the 100 euro assets from the Euroland are only worth like 100 Swiss franc, and hence equity is affected in a very negative way. The central bank makes a loss. In my stylized example, it is still the case that the Swiss central bank can handle like this kind of problem. Equity does not become negative. But why did the Swiss central bank switch to a floating exchange rate system when in the end it leads to a loss for the Swiss central bank? In January 2015, it became clear that the ECB will be even more, ECB monetary policy will be even more expansionary. So one European court decided that the ECB policy is in line with the law, and these new information led to an even larger appreciation pressure for the Swiss franc. And larger appreciation pressure means like more intervention is necessary. So in case that the Swiss central bank sticks to a fixed exchange rate system, they will have to buy more European assets. They have to print even more Swiss franc and buy European assets. But then the problem becomes even larger. In case that this balance sheet here blows up, the loss will be so large that the equity will become negative. So the Swiss central bank wanted to avoid this scenario because the inflationary pressure would even increase when the central bank is printing more Swiss franc. And in case that this balance sheet, like this bank, a bomb explodes, then the equity would be negative. So this is the motivational part for the model we would like to use in order to like characterize this situation here, that the central bank has to intervene heavily in the foreign exchange market. Let's have a look at the equations. So we have a usual goods market equilibrium condition in natural logs. So we have on the left-hand side goods supply, on the right-hand side goods demand. Here in brackets we have the natural log of the real exchange rate. We have a consumption term and government spending. Then we have a fixed exchange rate system, which you can see here. Because the money supply consists out of a domestic component, home component of money supply, and like the F represents the reserve component, the foreign component of money supply. Left-hand side of equation 2, that's the real money supply, and right-hand side is the real money demand, where we have here an autonomous component of money demand on the right-hand side. Equation 2, like is a money market equilibrium condition in a fixed exchange rate system. And then we have here like our usual UIP condition, R equal to R star. I just added like the expected change in the exchange rate in this equation so that we have a complete UIP condition. It's important to highlight what is endogenous, what is exogenous. We have 3 equations, so we can solve for 3 endogenous variables. And endogenous is the domestic price level, the foreign component of money supply, because we are looking at a fixed exchange rate system. And when the central bank intervenes, then the foreign component of money supply will change. And the domestic interest rate is also endogenous. Exogenous, the expected change in the exchange rate. The autonomous component of money demand is exogenous. Then a home component, foreign price level, domestic GDP, foreign interest rate, and the nominal exchange rate are like exogenous variables. It is important to stress that domestic output is exogenous. Output is capacity constrained, which you can see here. So there is a bar above the Y variable. What is also very important to look at the shifts of the curves. Here we have a somewhat more rich money market equilibrium condition, which includes like one autonomous component, and then here like the domestic interest rate. And I can see one mistake here, but I will highlight it in a minute. So how do we get to this equation here? We have to insert the right-hand side of equation 3 in the money market equilibrium condition. So we are inserting this stuff from the right-hand side instead of R. Let's mark that in yellow. So we are inserting this kind of stuff instead of R. And then we are solving this new equation for P. And then we are ending up at this equation here. So we solve this equation for P, ending up here. But here it is the case that one sign is missing. So we also have to write this sign in front of the expected exchange rate because we are inserting it like here on the right hand side. So something is missing here, a mistake is here. Not too important, but let's proceed. Please make the correction in your slide desk. So we have to talk about the shifts of the LM curve. The LM curve shifts upwards, of course, if money supply changes, but here we should also, like here, I will also make an adjustment and I'll put the natural log of H plus F at this position here. Very sorry. It's good that I record this lecture before class takes place so that I can make these corrections already in my slide desk. So also here, instead of M, like you should put like the natural log of H plus F. So the LM curve shifts to the right in case that the foreign interest rate increases. You can see here that there is a positive sign in front of R star. So when R star increases, P has to increase so that the equal sign holds. The LM curve shifts upwards, like in this diagram here. Then if the autonomous component of money demand decreases, then the LM curve also shifts upwards. We have a negative sign in front of D0. If the financial agents have depreciation expectations for the domestic currency, so if the expected change in the exchange rate increases, there is a positive sign here, then P has to increase, LM curve shifts upwards. Or like if the domestic output level would decrease, then also the LM curve shifts upwards. The LM curve does not shift if nominal money supply changes. So if H or the F component change, then the LM curve does not shift. And also the LM curve does not shift if the price level change, because these variables are displayed like on the two axes here. Great. Now I would like to look at one or several shocks. Like one shock could be an increase in like a decrease in the foreign interest rate. So let's assume that we are looking here at the Swiss situation. So the model looks at Switzerland and the foreign interest rate, that's the interest rate in the euro area, and the ECB is decreasing R star. So R star decreases. In order to analyze this kind of shock, I would like to make like one copy here, and I'll switch to PowerPoint. So give me 1 second so that we can analyze this shock in PowerPoint. So this is our situation here. So we have to think about whether the LM curve shifts upwards or downwards in case that R star changes. It is the case that the LM curve shifts like downwards in case that like R star decreases. So that's our initial LM curve. This is our new LM curve. Then we have to think about how would the shock be digested like in a floating exchange rate regime. In a floating exchange rate regime, money supply would be the same. The goods prices like would within Switzerland would decrease. And it is the case that the exchange rate would like decrease. So we would observe like an appreciation of the Swiss franc in case that there is a floating exchange rate system in place. But here it is the case that the exchange rate is fixed. So we have to say that we have to modify our analysis a bit. So this is E2, like the exchange rate should be fixed, and therefore like goods prices will stay the same in a fixed exchange rate system. This shock has no effect on the goods prices within Switzerland, but then we observe here that the Central Bank of Switzerland has to intervene in the foreign exchange market. So the home component will stay the same, but the foreign component of money supply will increase. The Swiss Central Bank has to intervene and has to buy foreign assets. So here, like money supply will increase from this initial level to a new level. So the central bank intervenes in the foreign exchange market. Yeah, let's have a look. This analysis stems from the following paper, like who put holes in the Swiss cheese, currency crisis under appreciation pressure. Like you can see the equations here. There is also one mistake here. It has to be a plus sign, of course. We talk about the real exchange rate here. Like everything else is the same as in my presentation. Then also like one little mistake here, when we compute the slope of the LM curve in this diagram, it is dPdE, which is equal to +1. So you have to reverse like this kind of fraction here. But everything else is the same as before. M0 initial level of money supply, P0 and E0 fix is the situation in the beginning. Then the LM curve shifts downwards because the ECB has lowered the foreign interest rate. In a floating exchange rate system, money supply would stay constant, goods prices would decrease, and the exchange rate would decrease, which is an appreciation of the Swiss franc. The central bank has to intervene to keep the fixed exchange rate in place. So in case that the central bank wants to defend the fixed exchange rate system, then it is a case that E2 has to be equal to E0. Then the goods prices within Switzerland do not change. We hit the LM curve in this dot, and money supply has to increase. So the central bank has to intervene in the foreign exchange market and increase money supply in circulation. This is like the in line with our motivation. So in case that the central bank has to intervene in the foreign exchange market in order to defend like in order to defend the fixed exchange rate, the central bank has to intervene. The central bank has to buy euro denominated assets and has to pay with freshly printed Swiss franc, so that the Swiss banknotes in circulation increases. This is what we said in the beginning, and this is also what you can see like in our analysis here, that money supply within Switzerland increases because of the foreign component of money supply. Let's have a look and analyze a second shock. A second shock could be that the central bank within Germany doesn't do anything, but that the financial agents just increase their like demand for Swiss franc. So it could be the case that we observe the following shock: an increase in the autonomous component of money demand in Switzerland. So D0 increases, or like it could be the case that suddenly we have not like depreciation expectations, but appreciation expectations for the Swiss franc. In order to analyze what happens in this graph, like we have to go back to our slide desk and check like this slide number 10. It says that if the autonomous component of money demand decreases, the LM curve shifts upwards. So in our case, when D0 increases, the LM curve will shift downwards. And here it also says if the financial agents have depreciation expectations for the domestic currency, then the LM curve shifts upwards. So in our case, there are appreciation expectations for the Swiss franc, and therefore the LM curve shifts downwards. So also here it is the case that the LM curve like shifts downwards in case that this or that shock occurs, and then the analysis will be, of course, identical compared to the analysis we have seen before. I would like to highlight one additional element of our paper. I have to copy once more, I have to copy once more our equilibrium conditions, and would like to talk a little bit about the UIP condition in a very extreme scenario. So I'm talking about the UIP condition here. I've copy pasted it to PowerPoint so that I can make my point. So let's assume that the ECB has decreased like the foreign interest rate to the level of 0. So the ECB decreases the foreign interest rate to 0, but we still have like appreciation expectations. Let's assume that the agents believe that the exchange rate will decrease by 5% per year. Yeah. Then the UIP condition looks as follows, like the foreign interest rate is equal to 0%, and like the expected exchange rate is a negative 5%. So it has to be the case that the Swiss central bank lowers the Swiss interest rate to like a negative 5%. So only a negative interest rate within Switzerland is in line with the UIP condition. And it seems to be the case that the Swiss central bank didn't want that the interest rate becomes negative. And therefore, the Swiss central bank abolished the fixed exchange rate system. So in the end of our paper, we are arguing. Let's have a look at the conclusion. In the title of the paper, we raised the question of who put holes in the Swiss cheese. We were able to identify 3 exogenous shocks. So the first one is an increase in the autonomous component of Swiss money demand. So D0 increases. A reduction of the interest rate within the Eurozone. So R star decreases. And an appreciation expectations for the Swiss franc. So all these 3 shocks matter. And in case that the ECB is putting the foreign interest rate to the level of 0, and there are still appreciation expectations, it has to be the case that the ECB, that the Swiss National Bank has to put the exchange rate, the interest rate level into the negative range. So in the end, we argue it becomes clear that the Swiss National Bank was to some extent reluctant to do whatever it takes to defend the peg. By giving up the peg, the SNB did not regain its full monetary independence because afterwards the ECB, by giving up the peg, the Swiss National Bank did not get back its full monetary independence because afterwards, after January 2025, the Swiss National Bank still intervened, which is a clear sign of a fear of appreciation. We can see that in the graphs. I think they are included in the paper. So even after the central bank gave up, the fixed exchange rate system in the beginning of 2015, it is still the case that the reserves are going up. So the Swiss central bank is still intervening in the foreign exchange market, which is like a dirty float. It's not a pure free float because there are still these fears of appreciation are still there. Thank you very much for listening to this video. I'll correct the mistakes and then you'll receive a new slide desk. Thank you so much. Have a nice day and bye-bye.